This is the Jackson Neill Music Podcast. It's Sunday, June 24th, 2018. Thank you so much for listening in right here, either on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube. And keep in mind, if this video goes over 10 minutes on YouTube, go down in the description and you can find the rest of the podcast on SoundCloud. I have a link down there. With that, let's jump right into it, where one of my favorite artists, I'm kind of done calling him a new artist. His debut project was released about a year and a half ago, and since then he's made a ton of noise. That project has been awesome. He's had a couple features here and there that have been incredible as well, and he is back. He has a new album coming out soon, he says, and released the first single off of it, a song that I'm absolutely in love in, and this is Six Lack, pronounced Black. I have that shirt. And with his brand new single, Switch. And on first listen, you can tell that he's going in a different direction with this album, which I totally love. Where it's just from this first single, we're already hearing somewhat of a new approach to his music. Where Free Black was an incredible debut project. He'd worked on it for years, and he really came out with a bang, and he really showed the world what he's capable of. But much like its cover with its all black and white, it was a very dark project, and it was had this very ominous sound. You remember the production quality of those sounds, just in the background, whether it was the drums or the ambient noises. It was a very, very dark soundscape you heard over the course of that debut. And it fit. It fit that he had gone through all this. He had, been working hard on this debut, and it was just kind of this dark time, but there was still some light at the end of the tunnel. There was still through all this darkness, there was still some light. And he was finally free as an artist. And he was free to be himself and release music how he wanted to, which we saw culminate in that debut and just basically turn him into a star. And now that he comes back, roughly a year and a half, 2 years later, he's grown a little bit. I mean, we must assume that, where he's had this big success, and we've seen him release a couple singles here and there, appear with a bunch of bigger name artists, and now it's time for his next project. And that's always a hard thing for an artist to do, because especially with the debut that he had that captivated audiences, how do you follow that up? And I think he has the right idea, because on his debut, if you look at that, if you take out the bonus track version, there is no features. None. But from the 11 tracks, it's all just him. And I love when an artist does that, because a lot of times nowadays I think people get saturated in too many features on their project. And when they have too many features, it kind of loses the vision, because everyone has their own little guest verses here and there, and it's hard to make it all work into a cohesive sound and project and storyline. And he said, screw that, I'm doing it by myself, I'm telling my story. And that was the best choice of action for him. He told his story as only he could by himself over the course of 11 tracks, and it was incredible. It gave you an idea of who he was as an artist. We know who Black is because of that project. It introduced us to him, it told us his story, and it showed us his sound. And I think that's everything you could ask for and more from a debut. And so now, following that up, we know who he is. When we see Black, we recognize that name, we know his sound, we have a picture in our head, okay, this is who he is as an artist. And Switch, just as the song does, but also in his career, kind of switches directions a little bit. It's not as much of a 180 as maybe you might think of Switch being, but it's just kind of a little bit of a fork in the road. A slight right, a slight turn, if you will. Because now with Switch, we have a little more upbeat, a little more singing. Where Black definitely had that singing aspect, and it was categorized as R&B and soul, but it was definitely this kind of new age trap where it's blurring the lines between R&B and hip hop. And while Switch does have some rapping in it, it's a lot more melodic. You hear that from the start and on the hook. It's just a little more upbeat, not to Khalid levels. Not just put a smile on your face. It's you can move a little bit to the Switch song, but still there's that kind of dark aspect to it, which we're accustomed to with Black's music. And this shows what he's kind of going for in this next project. Where, yes, there's successes, it brightens things up a little bit, and, maybe he wants to show a little different side of himself, but he's still kind of staying true to his original sound and what got him here. And another tidbit I saw about this upcoming album from him is that it's going to be a lot more features. It's going to have a lot of features on it. It's going to be pretty feature heavy, which, as I said before, can be bad at some points. But coming on your sophomore album, it really depends on what you do with those features. Because we know him as an artist, if you use the right kind of features, it can show off more of your skills. It can show off more of what you can do that you can't just do by yourself, and that could be awesome. Maybe more of a duet kind of thing on an R&B track. Him sharing bars with another rapper. There's some things he can add to that. Now you need to be careful, because sometimes you have that awesome project. I think Drake's So Far Gone. And then you all of a sudden, where Drake did have some features on that, but it was still mainly himself, and it was just an awesome project. And then you get all this funding maybe from a label or a bigger body of work, now that you're more known, and then you produce something like Thank Me Later. Which I like I like it from Drake, but I do see the criticisms of too many features. And I just worry that I don't want Black to do that on this project, where I still want to hear him, because right here on Switch, it's an absolute banger, and he didn't need anyone else. Where he's one of these few artists that can maintain this awesome melody with a very great voice, but still be able to drop bars and have a good, really fire verse. It's something that not many artists are able to do nowadays, and when he's able to do it, it's like unlike anyone else. And it almost sounds like he's featuring another singer, but it still flows very well because it's himself. So I think there's avenues he can take with this. Maybe it'd be cool to get some definitely other producers in there, see what other kind of sounds he can incorporate. But I still want to hear somewhat of a storyline throughout it. Whereas, Free Black wasn't necessarily what didn't tell a story of through its lyrics and everything. It was just more of a journey, of a musical journey over the course of his time stuck in label purgatory. I want this upcoming project, if I could have anything from Black, although of course he's listening. Crazy am I to think that. And if I could have anything from this project, it would just be, okay, we heard what it was like before the success, but now you had that debut. Now you had that breakthrough. What's it like since then? How have you been handling it? Now you know you're an international star. How much bigger do you want to take this? What are your goals for the career? Is it to take over with number one records? Is it to stay true and keep telling a story? I want to hear that. I want to see the direction on that. Because while Free Black was an awesome project, it wasn't necessarily a radio hit. I mean, Problems, X-Callin', they did get some radio play, but they weren't, all over the airwaves. Is he going to try to be like that? Is he trying to be more commercial in this next one? Is he going to say, I don't need to be commercial, I still want to have a story to tell? That's what I want to see from this upcoming project from Black, and I can't wait to hear it. It's one of my albums that I'm most looking forward to, I guess I could say, over the course of several weeks or so. With that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Music Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can check this out on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube. If the video goes over 10 minutes on YouTube, check down in the description for the link to listen to the rest of it on SoundCloud. Also, published at the same time as this is the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast, which is basically the same exact thing as this is, except I'm talking about sports. So if you're a big sports fan, check that out in the same feeds as well. Also, the Anything Goes with Jackson Neill podcast airs. Anything Goes with Jackson Neill, my radio show airs 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Standard Time on 107.9 FM in southern New Jersey. You can listen in live online, WRMLradio.org. So you can listen